This is the CBS News Special Report. I'm Tony Dokoupil in New York. The Supreme Court has just ruled on one of the biggest cases of the court's current term, a case involving the constitutional rights of transgender student athletes, and specifically whether states can ban transgender athletes from playing on girls' sports teams. Transgender athletes from Idaho and West Virginia challenged those state bans. But it's bigger than just those two states. 25 other states have similar laws saying that transgender athletes can indeed participate, but only on the team that matches their biological sex at birth. So let's go to Jan Crawford, our chief legal correspondent, who's been reading through this ruling. Jan, good morning. How did they rule and on what grounds?
Well, the justices in a ruling by Justice Brett Kavanaugh are saying that states can ban transgender athletes from participating in women's sports. They're saying that these state laws, you mentioned there are 27 of them, more than half of the states have these kind of bans, that they don't violate the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause, and they do not violate Title IX, that landmark 1972 law that really leveled the playing field for girls' sports. They're saying that these states have rational reasons for wanting to have girls and boys sports teams, and that states feel free to create those teams, draw those lines however they want to draw them, including based on someone's biological sex. So this means that those state laws that now ban transgender participation will remain in place. There are two other states that do it by policy, so a total of 29 actual bans, while other states, it appears from this ruling, can continue to proceed like they always have. If they want to allow it, then they're free to go ahead and allow that kind of participation. That would be exactly how the court handled its last major transgender rights case, when last year it left it up to the states to decide whether or not they're going to ban puberty blockers and hormone treatments for minors. Now, this case appears to be focused very much on sports. Justice Kavanaugh talking about why states may want to have male and female sports, the differences in the biology of girls and boys, and potentially safety reasons. It's very focused on sports, which means it doesn't resolve the broader issues about transgender rights. For example, the status on a passport or military participation. The court is also not deciding exactly how it wants to treat transgender rights in terms of their constitutional status. Are they going to subject it to kind of a heightened discrimination like they would racial discrimination, for example? They're saving those issues, those very big issues, for another day. But again, a major ruling, Tony, on an incredibly contentious issue that has divided the states across this country and our politics. Whether transgender athletes can participate in girls' sports, whether states can ban them from participating in girls' sports. Today, the court is saying yes, states are free to do that under the Constitution and under federal law. Tony.
All right, Jan, thank you very much. Let's bring in Jessica Levinson, a CBS News legal contributor and Loyola Law School professor. And Jessica, I'll just read a quote here from the opinion by Justice Kavanaugh. He writes, "The states argue and the court agrees that the interest of safety and competitive fairness are important interests for the purpose of equal protection. And the state's sex-based classification, limiting women's and girls' sports to biological females, is substantially related to those interests." Your reaction to the ruling today?
So my reaction is what the court is doing is fairly predictable. What they're looking at is their Equal Protection Clause case law that applies based on sex-based discrimination. And they're saying that these types of laws satisfy that level of scrutiny. So they're looking at what West Virginia is doing, what Idaho is doing, prohibiting transgender people from participating on girls' and women's sports. And they're saying, is that okay under the constitutional framework that we've created? And then they're going through that Equal Protection Clause analysis and saying, yes, it is okay. Essentially, as Jan said, this is something that the states constitutionally can do. And as you just discussed with Jan, this is something that under that landmark piece of legislation, Title IX, states are also free to do. It's interesting the court is consolidating the two cases, answering both questions at once.
All right, Jessica, thank you. Let's turn to Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett. Major, as Jan mentioned, this has been a hot-button social issue, something that's in the political bloodstream, the rights of transgender people in general, and in particular, the participation of transgender girls in high school and in college sports. How do you think this will be processed politically?
Well, during the 2024 campaign, Tony, as you and our audience well remember, this was an issue raised by Republicans, raised by Donald Trump against Democrats and Kamala Harris in specific, and it cut very aggressively against Democrats and the Kamala Harris campaign. President Trump, early in his second term, very extravagantly signed executive orders in this space to protect women's sports for women only and girls. One of the underlying questions here, Tony, is does transgenderism mean you are trying to seek, by being transgender, a competitive sports advantage? Or are you transgender because you want to be and later in life decide to participate in sports? Well, just because you've become transgender, does that mean you've given up any of your access to sports with your chosen new identity? Well, the court is wrestling with this. And the court said in its syllabus, this is still subject to scientific and medical debate, all of these issues related to transgenderism. But right now, the court is saying states have a valid and rational interest to put some limits, some protections for safety and competitive fairness in the legal code. But the court is acknowledging something that we should remind ourselves. This is an evolving debate. Right now, it is in a very definite hesitant towards transgender rights space. I would just remind our audience, there was a time in our country in the late 1990s and early 2000s when many states, most states in our countries, constitutionally banned same-sex marriage. We are in a different place on that issue now. That debate and all the human rights issues underneath that evolved over time. I'm not predicting that for transgenderism, but I'm saying that is something that our country went through on an issue that seemed to be, in the late 1990s and the early 2000s, settled. And it became unsettled because the Supreme Court and a cultural reevaluation of what same-sex marriage means in this country. We might see that in transgender space. We're not seeing it now, and the court is giving states latitude to impose some limits to protect those engaged in sports right now from a perceived threat of competitive imbalance or unfairness in that space.
All right, Major, thank you. Let's go to senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe, who joins us now. Ed, I imagine the president's going to take in this opinion and probably do a little bit of a political celebration today.
It will be. This is an issue, as Major mentioned, that was a galvanizing force for his election in 2024 and something he talks about on almost a regular basis, and that is a legislative push to try to ban conversion therapy or federal funding that might go to it in some way, and also talks openly about, in essence, getting the Supreme Court to where it got today, allowing the states to decide for themselves what exactly should be done about student athletes. We are awaiting a handful of the final rulings today. This one, of course, and then, of course, a decision on his attempt to undo birthright citizenship as a constitutional right, and then one other political coordination case that could ultimately be of benefit to Republicans, at least in this campaign cycle. So a big day for the White House to be watching for here, as we know that right now justices are still reading through this first opinion as we await the response in the next one. The president, for a while, has been channeling that he anticipates losing on the birthright citizenship case, but between this decision on transgender athletes and the handful of decisions yesterday regarding presidential power, they're ending the Supreme Court term here at the White House relatively pleased and, as expected, expanding presidential powers in terms of allowing him to fire heads of independent agencies, and then in this case, going as expected and allowing states to determine for themselves what to do about transgender athletes. Tony.
Ed, thank you very much. I want to go back to our chief legal correspondent, Jan Crawford. Jan, with the benefit of just a few more minutes to read through the ruling, any more takeaways?
Yes, I mean, there's a pretty sharp dissent from the liberal justices. Justice Sonia Sotomayor is now reading aloud parts of that dissent from the bench. And also, as we were talking about, what does it mean for states that currently allow transgender athletes to participate in sports like California and New York? The court, again, as we discussed, making clear that this ruling is not affecting those states. They are not ruling on that issue. There's going to be some legal challenges, I'm sure, ahead to those states and how they're handling it. But right now, the court is simply saying that states that states that want to ban transgender participation in girls' sports can do that under the Constitution and under federal law.
Jan, for the benefit of our audience here, what's the significance of Justice Sotomayor reading aloud her dissent from the bench?
it's something that the justices say when they feel very strongly about an issue. And we've seen these liberal justices feel pretty strongly about a lot of these cases. We've seen a lot of dissents being summarized from the bench recently. But historically, that's your signal that the justice wants you to listen and to pay attention to what they're saying in the dissent, because they believe what they have to say is so important, and they're registering their strong disagreement with what the majority is doing, Tony.
All right, Jan, thank you very much. And a note to our audience, minutes from now, we're going to get the Supreme Court decision on birthright citizenship. And when we do, we'll be back on the air as soon as that happens. Meantime, our coverage will continue on our streaming channel, CBS News 24/7, on your local news, and tonight on the CBS Evening News. Many of you will now return to CBS Mornings. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Tony Dokoupil in New York.